What's up, and welcome to episode 10 of the Wilbur and Gold Show. New episode. It is Tuesday, and before we get going, first things first, it's National Beer Day. It's National Beer Day. I have to know, what is your favorite beer to get on tap? Has to be on tap, because there's just something different about a good beer on tap. I think we can all agree on that. Me personally, I don't know that I have a pinpointed beer specifically that I like on tap. I have a couple that I like, a handful. I like a good IPA, specifically what kind of IPA. Well, Lagunitas IPA is my favorite. I don't know that I've ever had it on tap, though. I think I've always had that in a bottle. I'd say the IPA I'd have most on tap because it's always a special on Sundays, I think. Or one of the days on the weekend at one of the bars here in Greensboro, shout out Jake's Billiards, free plug, is the Sweetwater 420. And so that's probably the beer that I've had the most on tap. The best beer I've had on tap, though, is probably something called Yeah Toast. And it's, I forget all the different flavors that were in it. But it's basically the concept. It's like French toast, cinnamon, French toast, cinnamon, that type of flavor. And it was just, I think it was around Christmas time. That was also from Jake's Billiards. So if you're in Greensboro, you can't right now because of the coronavirus. But when we get this shit going again, you gotta try Yeah Toast if you can find it on tap or in the bottle. Yeah Toast is just, so good. So National Beer Day. It's also the 27-year anniversary of the original Sandlot movie. In my opinion, the best sports movie of all time. Others would argue Major League, although Talladega Nights is also in that conversation as well. Sandlot is probably my favorite. It's because I was a baseball player growing up. I don't know. I mean, obviously, the baseball aspect is what drew me to it in the first place, because that was when I first watched it, was when I was in Little League, so it kind of resonated with me a bit. And, I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan, even though sports is mainly my thing, I'm not a sports movie guy. I'm a star, obviously, Star Wars is my thing, but I'm not that big into sports movies. I think it's because the sports aspect, when you're watching like the actual sports games and the competitions in the actual movie, a lot of times they're just so cheesy and they're so bad. Like it's not realistic sports. And so I don't know, that always just kind of turned me off to sports movies, but Sandlot was just, in my opinion, it's the best sports movie, period. So 27-year anniversary today. What else? Cassius Stanley, Duke star freshman, has declared for the NBA draft, assuming we have one. Obviously, coronavirus again. He is, I believe, the second player from Duke this season to declare for the draft. Obviously, the first, if you follow it, was Trey Jones. I think most people could have saw that coming. He was their star guard sophomore. Look, Cassius Stanley is really good. He's so explosive, very Russell Westbrook, Ja Morant-like at times. I had the pleasure of witnessing these two beauties right here at NC State.
Plucked out of the air by Goldwire. Junior from Norcross, Georgia, and at the rim, Kevin Keats thought he was fouled. Took him a while to get back up. Stanley back up.
That was a sight to behold. I'm actually a little pissed, because on the second one, which was just absolute bomb of those two bombs, I was actually this close to pulling my phone out because I wanted to get a good Instagram story. And so I wanted to kind of get some live action. And I was like that close to pulling my phone out probably 2 possessions before he went up for that dunk. And then when he did that, I was just like, what are we doing? And so, yeah, Cassius Stanley, really good, and I think he's got a lot of potential as a pro player. He was a little inconsistent this year. there were nights that he would come out and he just looked like, okay, yeah, this guy's a lottery pick. And then there was other nights where it was like you forgot he was on the court. And so, me personally, I would have come back to Duke one more year, at least. That's just what I would have done. But at the end of the day, it's their decision. Obviously, it's their decision. It's what they think is best for them, and I think that's something that sports fans. Need to always remember, especially when we see it all the time in college football and college basketball, mainly because those are the two big sports that impacts us fans the most, at least college fans. When we lose our favorite star players to the pros, we get mad sometimes because we were like, oh, you're not being loyal, you didn't come back. But you have to remember, this is a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid who is thinking about their livelihood, thinking about what's best for them, and you got to put yourselves in their shoes. I mean, if you had the opportunity to go to the pros and make millions and play with the best, I'm pretty sure you would do that, or in whatever field you're in, if you had that opportunity to go to the top of the top, you'd probably take that opportunity as soon as you can. But in my just objective opinion, I think Cassius Stanley should have come back just one more year to kind of groom himself up a little bit more. But it may work out. We'll see. Let's see. Oh, Buccaneers, new uniforms. Well, new uniforms. It's actually the old uniforms that they went back to. They unveiled those today. I really like them. With as is the case with most changes of any kind, a lot of people are skeptical at first, then they come around. But I think a lot of people wanted the dreamsicle look from back in the 70s or 80s. This look right here. I thought that was possible. I actually didn't know until this morning or last night that, which now a lot of people assume this when Tom Brady announced he was going to the Buccaneers a few weeks ago, that, all right, we got to get new unis for the GOAT. So I think that was almost assumed. But I think a lot of people really wanted that dreamsicle look. I like the jersey part of that dreamsicle orange look. I don't like the helmets. I like the helmets they have now better. I think if you did go to the dreamsicle look, I almost think what would be kind of dope is if instead of the small, I think the helmet you should have had for the dreamsicle look is an orange helmet, almost kind of like the Clemson helmet, only put the Buccaneers logo on it. And instead of the logo you originally had on the dreamsicle uniform helmet, it would be the flag that you have now, only blended in with the colors to match the orange dreamsicle look. To me, that would have been kind of dope. But they decided to go back with the throwback look. It's a very solid, tough look, and I like it. I think it's a lot better than what they had. I was not a fan of the alarm clock uniforms. So that is just a little whirlwind of what's been going on today anyway. So what I wanted to get into today, actually, before I do that, I got a comment on my last video that I posted yesterday talking about Cam Newton and the Panthers, how they handled Cam. And I did a segment talking about how I think that the Panthers, even though they got rid of Cam, they've stripped the whole roster. Even though that they've signed Teddy Bridgewater to a 3-year, $60-some million deal, 62 or 63, I still think that they are tanking for Trevor Lawrence. And I got a really good, thoughtful comment on that video that I wanted to, one, give a shout out to, because I love comments and I want more of them, because that's a way that I learn. That's a way that I figure out new topics, new content. This particular comment was from Sir Hen AB50. He left a comment about that statement about the Teddy Bridgewater $63 million deal. So Howard, he basically said, if they're tanking for Trevor Lawrence, as I said, then why would they sign Teddy Bridgewater to a 3-year, $63 million deal? To that, I said this directly to his comment on little comment section, but I wanted to kind of give it a little more context here live to bring him some value and bring you value. If you were wondering the same thing, look, I think you can be tanking without being catastrophic about it. I think you can tank without just getting blown out every game and being horrendous, a la the Browns every year until the last couple of years, a la the Browns every year up till the last couple of years. I mean, you don't have to get blown out just 20-something to goose egg every game in order to be tanking. You can still maintain a fight. You can still maintain competitiveness and still be tanking. I don't think it has to be just like to the core we're tanking. I think you can still strive to be competitive and still be tanking. And in other words, what I mean is I think the Panthers are going to be competitive in a good portion of their games, but I think they're going to lose most of their games. And as I outlined in that segment, there's maybe 3 games, 4 at the most, and I'm not convinced about that 4th one against the Falcons at home. I don't know when they're playing that, but that's the one that I'm not sure about. And if you only win 3 games, as of now, there's not a lot of bad teams that are going to be trying to tank next year. Because a lot of the teams that are bad, that still haven't gotten quarterbacks, they're going to take one this year, a.k.a. Tua, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. They're going to get a quarterback this year, so they don't need to tank for next year. And to me, I think the teams that are going to have enough losses to be in the conversation to get that top pick or one of the top picks, it's going to be the Panthers, it's going to be the Patriots, it's going to be the Jags. Beyond that, I don't know. Those are just the 3 that stands out to me. But I think you can be tanking without it being like your main priority. I think they're still going to be competitive because Teddy Bridgewater's solid, and they've got some solid receivers, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, now Robbie Anderson, and obviously McCaffrey. But just because you're competitive doesn't mean you won those games that you were competitive in. And I think they're only going to win maybe 3, 4 at best. And with that type of record, you're in the running for that top pick. So that's what I mean when I say that I think they're still tanking even though they have Teddy Bridgewater. And the guy that left the comment, he actually brought up a good point. There's also not just Trevor Lawrence, there's Justin Fields. And to me, that was very true. And not only that, but I think Teddy Bridgewater could maybe end up being a trade piece at some point down the road, especially if you know you're going to get Trevor Lawrence or after you get Trevor Lawrence, or maybe he's the backup. Because, I mean, you got to admit he's probably the best backup in the league, but I don't know if he'd want to be a backup. So that's just kind of thinking out loud, but I do think they're going to be in the running for that Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields pick, as Sirhan AB50 mentioned earlier today. So really appreciate that comment. I want as many comments as I can get. So yeah, to the topic at hand, and that is Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. Nick Foles got traded to the Bears a few weeks ago when kind of free agency got up and popping. The Bears was kind of a destination that a lot of people speculated that Cam could get traded to. That obviously didn't happen, especially once Nick Foles got traded. And you know, you have to remember a couple things when it comes to the Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles quarterback competition. The Bears GM earlier this year, he said, "Oh, well, Trubisky's our guy. He's our guy." And this is after the Bears have gone 8-8, completely flopped, when last year they were one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl because they had the top defense in the league and they had pretty good weapons, and Trubisky was solid last year. And then this year they just completely flopped. They still had one of the better defenses this year. Pro Football Reference had them ranked number 4 in the league in the regular season. Obviously regular season, because they sure as hell didn't go to the playoffs. But, I mean, Trubisky had a horrible year. in his second year in the NFL. You have to remember that. And it pains me to say this, but he's a Tar Heel, a.k.a. our object of the day, Tar Heel teddy bear. Which sucks, because obviously you want Tar Heels to do well. But look, Trubisky had a really bad year, and he kind of made matters worse on himself with his mental aspect of the game. He said things like this after, a bad performance. He's asked questions about it, and this is what he said.
I'm trying to get some of these TVs in the building turned off because you got too many people talking on TV about us and what they think about us, what we should do, what we are and what we're not, but they don't really know who we are or what we're capable of as people or what we're going through or what we're thinking. It's just the outside viewers looking in. And so, tunnel vision, earmuffs, and just come to work every day and try to get better and get back to what we know we're capable of doing.
Look, if you were actually being tunnel vision and earmuffs over the years, you wouldn't feel the need to, one, turn off the TVs, and two, you wouldn't feel the need to tell us that you wanted to turn off the TVs and that you're tunnel vision. Because one thing that I've observed, and one thing as I'm trying to learn from other successful people, is that people who are really confident in general, or confident in their approach, or confident in their mindset, or confident in whatever it is they do, they don't feel the need to tell you that they are. They just do it. They show you. And look, Mitchell Trubisky, he's weak. He's soft mentally and kind of physically too, because he wasn't very good on that front either. He's not very good. I think he is a solid backup in the NFL based on what he's done so far, but he's not very good. He's not a starter. And the question is there really, who will be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears come week 1, assuming we have a week 1 with the coronavirus? It's going to be Nick Foles. And Nick Foles had the edge already the minute he was traded. And here's the elements you have to look at. The Bears GM earlier this year, after everything that happened, after the mediocre season they had, after Trubisky said what he said about TVs and just everything, he said that Trubisky's their guy. This week, this is after they've gotten Nick Foles, he said it's an open competition. And that's probably putting it mildly. Because in my opinion, Foles had the edge from the beginning. And one thing you have to remember is the Bears, they picked up, when trading for Foles, they picked up his contract. He's making more money than Mitchell Trubisky too. That's a very important detail that needs to be stated, because now they've got more money invested in Foles than they do Trubisky. That's not points in Trubisky's favor. Trubisky sure as hell doesn't have points in his favor with the Bears fans, and that's not good, because if you play in New York, Boston, Chicago, or Philly, and the fans are not in your favor, that's points against you, especially if you're weak mentally. You are going to implode. And Trubisky is already imploded, and it's probably only going to get worse now that Foles is there. The Bears have more money invested in Foles at this point because they picked up his contract. And while there may be a competition at quarterback, I have no doubt that statement wasn't true. Let's just be honest. Foles has the edge, and I would say he's going to be the starter week 1, assuming we have a week 1. And I think Trubisky's going to be the backup until he's ultimately probably traded or let go by the Bears. And I think that's how it's going to unfold. And one last thing before we get out of here, the reason I feel so confident about that is because I kind of dealt with that as far as the mental aspect of it. As a baseball player, there were a lot of times I was not the most mentally tough player, especially when it came to my throwing and making mistakes on the defensive side of the ball. And one thing I learned is that usually when you're in your head, I'm not saying you can't get out of it. Of course you can, because there were times I did get out of it, but then I'll get right back in. And when you have to remember is when you're in your head, usually you're not in your head worrying about, am I going to make a mistake? You're in your head worrying about, what are other people going to think about my mistake? Because if you didn't care what other people thought about that mistake, well, you wouldn't be worried about it at all. And that's a tough thing to shake. And that's going to be a tough thing for Trubisky to shake, especially in Chicago, especially when he's already got a lot of fans not on his side anymore. And I just think it's going to be tough for him to rebound in Chicago. I think he's going to need to get a fresh break. I think he's going to need to get a new bit of scenery until he can kind of maybe get something going again. I say again as if he actually had it going in the first place. I mean, he was solid in his first year, but I mean, last year he's got some work to do, and I don't know if it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work out in Chicago. I think he's going to be gone after this year, and I don't think he starts more than 2 games this year. I think Nick Foles is the guy. And not to mention Nick Foles, on the flip side of this, with Mitchell Trubisky being the liability mentally that he is, Nick Foles is very tough and strong mentally, and he's already proven that. He's literally gone in for a quarterback in Carson Wentz for the Eagles a few years ago, when Wentz was literally the front runner and would have won MVP had he not went down in week 14 of the season, I believe it was that season. And Nick Foles took hold of the locker room too, by the way. It wasn't just on the field. He's a locker room leader. He's a locker room guy and a locker room leader, and that's going to matter in Chicago, where they lacked that last year, obviously, in Trubisky. And so Foles stepped in and took that team to the Super Bowl. And don't forget, also, a lot of people doubted the Eagles that year. That's why the whole dog mask came into play, is because a lot of people doubted them because of Nick Foles being their quarterback. He took them all the way to the Super Bowl, and all week the media still doubted the Eagles that week in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and they finished the deal, won the Super Bowl. Foles has a ring because of it, and I think that matters in this quarterback competition. I just think Foles is a leader in the locker room, and I think he's very tough, and he's proven he's tough mentally. And so I think that's going to matter. And so I think Foles is going to be the guy for the Bears. I think the Bears knows that he's going to be the guy for them. I think they knew it when they traded for him. And so, yeah, that's where I stand on that. So that is going to do it for today. Thank you all for joining in. Wilbur and Gold Show. Wilbur and Gold Show. We'll be back tomorrow. Will Dalton, a.k.a. Wilbur and Gold. This is the Wilbur and Gold Show. We'll see you next time.